ought to just give them the old vault.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the July 18th, 2011 meeting of the Currituck County Board of Commissioners to order. Tonight we have Reverend James Ross to deliver our invocation and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone would please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As we remain standing for prayer. Most gracious Heavenly Father, we do love you. We thank you, Father, for this opportunity to be here. We do pray especially for each commissioner that's present. We know their work is heavy sometimes, but we know that your guiding light shining upon them will bring the cohesion that they need to go ahead and get the job done here in Currituck County. You bless this county, and Father, you continue to bless it. And we ask that the minds work together with the public, constituents. And Father, may we see more things grow out of this county that have never been seen before. We love you and thank you now for each and every one present. We ask this prayer in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Mr. Ross. At 6 p.m. this afternoon, we had a work session to receive an update on the Technical Aviation Training Center, and at 6:30 we received a presentation from the Department of Transportation on the 2012 Secondary Roads Program. Item number 1 is approval of the agenda. I have one change that I would like to make to tonight's agenda, and that would be add to the consent agenda approval of the Department of Transportation's 2012 Secondary Roads Program. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 2 is public comment. This is time to hear comments from the public on items of interest. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. And Mr. McCree, you will be our timekeeper. Thank you. Has anyone signed up for public comment? Having no one signed up for public comment, we will move on. Is there anyone who would like to make public comment? Seeing no one, we'll move on. Item number 3. Public hearing in action, PB 08-03 Backwoods Hideaway. It's a request for preliminary plat special use permit for 16 lots located on Northwest Backwoods Road, approximately 1.4 miles north of the intersection with South Mills Road, tax map 3, parcel 3A, Moyock Township. This is an item that we had on the last agenda, so at this point in time, we tabled it. At this point in time, I'll reconvene the evidentiary phase of the hearing. Anyone who was not sworn the last time and would like to make comments tonight needs to come forward to be sworn. Seeing no one, I'll turn it over to Mr. Woody.
Mr. Chairman, since our last meeting, Mr. Dale with Hyman and Roby has met with the concerned neighbors. What I'd like to do is I'd like to allow Mr. Dale to provide an update of their meeting and some of the changes that they've agreed to accommodate the neighbors, and we've got some photographs to illustrate that.
Mr. Dale, if you come forward, please.
Mr. Oldham, we need to swear in.
Yeah. Are you going to speak, Jerry?
If I need to.
Okay. Well, we'll swear you in. You swear that your testimony will be the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
Good
Welcome,
evening.
Mr. Dale.
Wednesday afternoon, after our initial meeting, our last Board of Commissioners meeting, I met with the property owners that were in attendance. And before, we didn't have an illustration showing the alignment of the road with the adjacent houses and the proximity of how the vehicles will be entering in and out of the property. I met with neighbor across the street, and she's in attendance tonight. I decided to push the street 10 feet to the north to minimize the light interference on her home. I did not want to push it anymore because of the really large stand of trees that are out there. They're approximately 45 feet in height, maybe a little taller. And these are the bushes that are shown up on the to the north of the street. With that said, that was what we are proposing to do at this time. That is the best course of action I feel that we can do, is to push the road to the north. Just the alignment of the lights coming down the street it's the best location, and they would minimize the shine on our home.
Okay. So I assume that we're in agreement to that?
No, we ain't.
She would like.
I own the whole.
Oh, wait, hold just a second. Let me finish with him. Yes.
She is interested in a buffer of some kind. Hesitant to go on to somebody else's property at this time. If leave that discretion up to the board, what you guys feel that we should do as far as providing a buffer to the property. Like I said, we don't really necessarily feel that we're required to at the moment, but if that's what we should do, we need to look at that route. But right now, we prefer not to put one in.
I didn't understand a buffer was part of the request at the last meeting. I thought it was more of a headlights and moving the road issue.
The headlights, and at the meeting, she asked if we were going to put up an 8-foot tall privacy fence.
Oh, okay.
I don't know that an 8-foot tall privacy fence in the front of your yard is warranted at this time.
Okay.
For vehicles coming in and out of the property.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Dale?
Yes. When you say buffer, is the privacy fence the same as a buffer?
The county has two basic buffers. It's either a planting buffer or sometimes in lieu of a planting buffer, if space is not available, sometimes we'll put a fence up in place of a planted buffer.
If this buffer were to be built, where exactly would it be built? If you can show me on this time.
She is interested in putting it across the front of the yard.
All right, I'll ask her then, but that's fine.
Okay.
Any further questions for Mr. Dale? Hearing none, thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am. Please come forward and give your name and address for the record.
I'm Tina McCutcheon. I live at 515 Northwest Backwoods Road. Even if he moves the road over, no matter where, I own the whole front end of that property and the guy that lives beside that road. My whole property covers the front. The house is right in front of the road where he wants to build it. Even if he scoots over, there's still bedrooms at the other end of the house. Not my bedroom, but now it's my daughter's bedroom. I don't know how he's going to put it in an angle to get the lights out of my eyes, but he thinks he can put it in a curve. I don't see how he can put it in a curve. 8-foot fence going to look gaudy, but at least it keeps the lights out. I don't know what else to do with a fence. What else can you put up?
All right, my question to you is, you want him to pay for a fence or a...
Should I have to?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Please keep your comments to questions.
He asked me, I was like,
okay,
should I have to?
Your proposal is that he pays for a fence to go in front of your house so the lights don't shine. A buffer, whether it's plants or a fence.
Well, I'm not too happy about a bunch of plants. No.
I'm sorry?
I'm not real happy with a bunch of plants. Is that what you said? A bunch of
Well,
trees?
I mean, he had said the options were a fence or some type of shrubs.
Well, no, he didn't mention shrubs to me. I mentioned a fence to him. We didn't talk about no shrubs.
Okay. That's fine.
Any further questions for the witness?
I would like to know the extent of the fencing and approximate cost,
Well,
if
I
that
have
is
no idea.
possible. How
Mr.
long
Dale?
would that fence be?
Well, I think it would look stupid on just one side of my property of my driveway if I don't put it on the other side. I mean, I think that would look gaudy, but if you just put it on one side of the front of the house, don't that look? That would look kind of stupid if I didn't do it on the other side too.
Mr. Neal?
I want to ask a question up here as I look at the lines going across there. The dark part, is that the shadow of your house?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Because
Yeah, that's my house.
what I'm looking at is if the red is the new road alignment, they're not shining on your house.
Yeah, if it doesn't shine in my house, I'm happy. But if it does, I would like to have some kind of protection from that.
I'm
A
just trying.
guardrail. If they don't shine in my house, can I get a guardrail up or something? I'll be happy if a guardrail's up as long as there's some kind of protection as people come to the end of that street stopping instead of kept coming on across. Or if there's going to be lights in my bedroom all night long, I'd like to have some kind of fence. Or if you got some big enough bushes, I guess. I don't know. I don't really want bushes in my front yard like that.
Well, how about if the shrubbery and the screening was planted across the street on their property? Well, then
that's
that
fine.
would block the driveway. Okay, duh. Okay.
But I don't know how they're going to block the end of the street.
Yeah, I understand.
Well, I'm just looking at the proposed move, and if a car, it's beyond her house, according to what I'm seeing. Can you enlarge that, or is that? I'm looking at the shadow.
You're correct that the previous alignment of the street, if you extended it straight towards her house, it barely touched the edge of the house. By moving the road alignment 10 feet north, you've basically set that alignment 10 feet north of her house. So yes, if a car sits there perpendicular to Northwest Backwoods, the lights would shine 10 feet north of the house.
Well, that's really not accurate because headlights spread out.
They
don't
do.
just shine
They
at a
do.
beam. You know, we're not talking about a coherent light here. So, anything coming that road is going to shine on our house one way or the other.
I have a question. When they pull up to the stop sign, how busy is that road?
Not.
So when they pull up to the stop sign, they're not going to be stopped there 2 seconds if they stop at all.
The suggestion I had last meeting
I mean, it's
was
not like
based
it's
on
constant light.
what they built at West Neck, which is a community out in Virginia Beach, where the road comes out of the community. It forms a Y, and there's a sign monument right in the middle of the Y. So traffic coming out, the lights are blocked by the signage, and it also facilitates getting in and out because you're automatically turning to come in and go out rather than pulling out perpendicular to the road. And that probably would fit within that right-of-way that they've set aside there, that property they own for it. But in doing that, traffic coming down the road toward our house, the lights wouldn't shine on it because there's a sign in front of it, and then they'd be turning to get onto the road.
Well, I can't remember a situation where we've ever had this before. I mean, I've got a road at the end of my house where the lights come, and when they turn, they go across.
Yeah.
I mean, and my road's direct. This one's not even going to be direct. I think that the applicant has addressed her concerns about moving the road. I mean, I don't know. I mean, we're talking about a fence on both sides of the driveway. I mean, I don't know that this board's got authority to start dictating to somebody to build a fence in another person's private property, is my concern. Mr. McCree, I mean, I know we can put reasonable requirements, but I mean, we're talking about a fence in another person's yard and not just a 8-foot piece. She's talking about on both sides of her driveway to make it look right. I mean, that's.
You're right. You may add conditions that are reasonably related to the use of the applicant's property. That is not what is being presented to you right now. It is to do something on somebody else's property.
Yeah, I just don't want us to get wrapped up in the axles on stuff that's not going to stand scrutiny if somebody objects to it.
Well, I agree. I think really we're opening a whole nest of snakes to be building a fence. Next thing you know, we'll have warranty issues with the fence and
who's
ad
gonna
infinitum.
maintain
Who's going to maintain it and what happens if it turns out to be substandard later on.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
What appears to be trees in front of your house from the aerial photograph, are they still there?
Little bushes, they go way up here before you see the bushes. There's nothing underneath.
Well, they almost.
They're like they were bushes, but they're trees now, I guess.
They only like just a few feet from being the entire length of your house, from your driveway, it looks like. And I'm like Commissioner O'Neill, I've never remember us going on somebody else's property, requiring the developer to do that. Because we've got roads all over this county. East Ridge Road comes out right in front of
In
somebody's
other words,
house.
well, wait a minute. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
Okay. Any further questions?
I think she had a comment.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
I've wasted my time, really, if you can't do nothing about it, right?
I think that
If you're not here, if you can't help me, I ain't got nobody else to help me, right? That's what I'm here for your help.
Well, I think that we did help you. He's moved the alignment of the road. I think that's very clear. And so.
As long as it works out that way, I'm fine. I don't have no problem with that at all.
And that's what he's testifying tonight under oath that they're going to do is move the alignment of the road to
Lights
help.
won't be in my eyes at night. I don't care.
if the board approves this plan, that's what he has to do. He can't go back to the old plan. He has to do exactly what he's shown here tonight, if that's what the board approves. If the board approves it.
Anything further? Mr. Owens, would you like to say anything?
Not at this time.
Okay. With that being said, I'll close the public hearing and I'll ask the board for a motion.
Well, based on what Mr. McCree has said earlier, I mean, I don't know that you can require somebody to go on private property and do that. So with the changes that have been made, I move for approval as presented.
Second.
Have a motion and approval and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And
Go ahead.
I would ask that if, upon further review, you could move it even further north in consideration. Even a foot or 2 foot would be something that would certainly be appreciated by the neighbor. If after review you could do that and bring it back.
I'll take a look at it as we go in the final design, see if I can move it a little bit further.
Just make sure you go north, not south.
And if it's a way of providing some shrubbery for screening or something, please work with her and get it done. All we want is to have good neighbors and, amongst each other. So, Jerry, I'm sure you were willing to do that, so thank you. Okay, moving on. Item number 4, public hearing and action. PB 11-08, Denton E. Snyder, request to amend the Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 2, zoning districts, and Chapter 3, special requirements to allow for the storage of vehicles, boats, and trailers on a vacant residential lot. We have numerous people signed up to speak. With that, I'll open the public hearing and turn it over to Mr. Woody.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a text amendment request before you tonight, which means it's an amendment to the language included in the Unified Development Ordinance, which is the zoning and subdivision ordinance for Currituck County. This particular request is to allow for the storage of vehicles, boats, or trailers on a vacant residential lot, provided that storage meets certain conditions. In Mr. Schneider's amendment, he has proposed some conditions that are included in your packet. Those are the methods or the ways in which you could store this type of equipment or vehicles on a vacant residential lot. Our current UDO, talk about what we have now, our current UDO allows for an unlimited number of licensed vehicles and trailers and up to 4 boats to be stored on a residential lot, provided the lot has an occupied single family dwelling on it. In other words, the storage of boats and trailers and vehicles that are licensed is an accessory use to your single-family dwelling, to the property you live on. What this amendment does is it makes the storage of the vehicles, trailers, or boats a primary land use in a residential area. In other words, you can have an empty residential lot on which you could store this type of equipment, provided you meet the conditions put forward by Mr. Snyder. And I won't read them or verbatim, but basically Mr. Snyder has included some conditions that require the vehicles to be licensed or registered, to be under common ownership, and et cetera. A couple of things I want to go over that lead up to our recommendation or staff's recommendation. Number one is in the UDO, that's our current ordinance, residential zoning districts are designed and intended to be secure for persons who reside there in a comfortable, healthy, safe, and pleasant environment, sheltered from incompatible and disruptive activities, and that comes from the UDO. Specifically, the basic residential district, which is a district the amendments proposed in, the R zoning district, is designed to provide for low-density residential development. Staff feels, and I'll go ahead and say this, that we think this amendment may create some compatibility issues in the residential zoning districts with this type of storage. Another concern staff has is the proposal may lead to the storage of other items or equipment that are not allowed by the UDO and may not be consistent or meet the compatibility standards of our residentially zoned areas or our residential subdivisions. And of course, another thing to keep in mind is also is we create criteria for how different types of vehicles or trailers are stored on vacant residential lots. It also creates additional enforcement activities for the county to actually police this type of allowance. Because of the factors I've reviewed, staff is, at this time, recommending denial of this request. We don't think it meets the compatibility standards of our residential zoning districts. This request also went to the Planning Board at their meeting last month. The Planning Board also recommended denial with a unanimous vote. They stated their reasons being, one, that the amendment's inconsistent with the land use plan, and two, that it's not a proper use to have storage in residential subdivisions. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
Any questions for Mr. Woody?
Yeah, I have one question. One thing that bothers me, that if you're in a residential subdivision that has relatively small lots and somebody purchased a number of them contiguous, they could park all of this stuff on their lot where their residence is, but wouldn't be able to use any of the other lot space for it. And to me, that seems like it's almost hypocritical. You know, if you can let them park 4 vehicles, boats, and trailers in their primary residence, why not let them, take advantage of some of the additional space they have and put it elsewhere on property they own? But I would want them to be contiguous lots, and I'd also want the residence to be the primary residence of the person that owned the equipment, rather than having a house they might be renting out and storing all of his stuff on the property there. And we're out in the middle of a rural county setting, not in the middle of a downtown area. And as long as reasonable constraints are made to keep it from becoming an eyesore, which a lot of them have been addressed here, I'm not sure all of them have, I really don't have a problem with it.
In this particular instance, I will note that the amendment request is driven by a lot that is not contiguous to where the applicant lives. So we don't have a situation where it's contiguous. In the past, we've had contiguous lots where we've had storage. I think the county, as a policy, has requested that there be a recombination done. So there's multiple lots that are combined into one lot. Go ahead.
Mr. O'Neill?
Well, I'm just give a little bit of a history of this situation. Back in the 90s, as Currituck started to grow, what was happening was people from the Tidewater area were taking their vacant lots, and some of them, they were using them for storage. They could buy a lot in Currituck County, and they bring a big Conex box down here, and they load the Conex box up, operate business equipment and stuff such as that out of it. What happened to cause the county to clamp down on this was people started to complain, and the complaints arose out of the Tulls Bay area. We had people that would bring equipment and just leave it on a vacant lot in the middle of a subdivision, and various other things. They put storage sheds out on a vacant lot and leave them. It created quite a problem. I'm sure you remember that, and Mr. Martin as well. So the ordinance as it stands now had a lot to do with that. And right now I know of a situation where a similar situation is going on, where a person is using a vacant lot. It's not in a subdivision. It's not contiguous to a platted subdivision, but they have Conex box on there. They have equipment on there. They have a trailer on there. And I don't want to get in trouble here, but they are ignoring the county's requirement that it be brought into compliance. So the very thing that happened back then is still happening somewhat now, but that's how we got where we are today. What the answer is, I'm not sure I know. I think Mr. Snyder has made an attempt, but I don't know what the ramifications are when you start going into other subdivisions that such as Walnut Island or some of the other places, how it's all going to play out. And I'd like to get comments from Mr. Woody as to what the far-reaching would be beyond just this one particular thing. Is that a concern?
It is a concern, and in the history that I wasn't here when this occurred, but my staff who were here kind of elaborated the same problems we've had, particularly up in the Moyock area with lots being used as storage. So we, as staff, we just really feel strongly that allowing the storage of any types of items on vacant residential lots, particularly if they're not contiguous to where you live, is just a slippery slope. We think it's ultimately a bad policy decision for the county, given our history and given some of the challenges we've had code enforcement related to policing crowded lots or lots being used inappropriately. So,
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Mr. Woody.
Yes, sir.
There's a property in four-wheel drive that you and I know about that's ongoing. I think Mr. McCree is taking care of it with some trailers and stuff on it. This is what we're referring to, that Commissioner O'Neill, people having lots and storing stuff on it. Is that right?
That's correct. We have a difficult challenge enforcing the ordinance we have now. We often end up in Mr. McCree's office. And I think allowing the storage and putting criteria, while it may be effective, it just makes it more difficult for us to enforce, in my opinion.
Well, just this one particular property has got equipment on it. Chairman Ollett is familiar with it. It's got 4 tractor trailers on it and construction equipment piled on it, and it's 2 lots. And the person's pretty much refusing to do anything with it, and Mr. McCree, I think, has got it. And this is the fear that I have, is that if you open up Pandora's box or go down the slippery slope that Mr. Woody's talking about, it affects people in their neighborhoods and in front of their houses. This lady was just talking about headlights, the intrusion of headlights. Can you imagine the intrusion of equipment in your front yard? You've got a nice home, but across the street, and this is the problem that I've got.
Any further questions for Mr. Woody? Hearing none, first person signed up, Mr. Denton Snyder. Please come forward, give your name and address for the record.
Good evening. Denton Snyder, 112 Flounder Street, Moyock. I am the one that has proposed this text amendment. I've had these trailers parked on my lot since 1998 and have never had a complaint from a neighbor, and did not know I was in violation of the UDO until I got the letter from the county. What you see right now is what is allowed by the UDO. I can move all 4 of my trailers and cars and park them on my lot right here, or I could put a heck of a lot more on there. If I could show you what I have, this is what I have proposed to the board. This is how I said I was going to keep my trailers. This is how I was going to stow them on a vacant lot. That's how they've been since I've submitted this text amendment. To Mr. O'Neill, when you're talking about the reason that this ordinance was changed, I agree that that could become a problem, but the text amendment that's in here right now addresses that issue where you have to live in the residential area and you have to have a vacant lot there, and everything has to be in your name and has to be. So it gives the county more enforcement, and it prevents people from coming and buying a vacant lot without buying a house also to stow stuff. That's not going to happen. I just don't see that happening. Okay. Now, I came before you in February and the board agreed with me at that time and asked the county to go and ask Ben Woody to make some recommendations for your consideration. He admitted that. He sent them out. He got few responses back. I was informed that the county was not interested in doing it, that I would have to sponsor the change to the UDO, and that's what I'm doing today. Okay. As far as what the purpose of a residential area is and low density, I would say that if I have a house and if I have a vacant lot and if I have trailers on the vacant lot, I'm going to lower the density than what it's platted for, because it's one less house that's going to be built there. This is what I bought these lots for, is so I could have the place to stow them. Okay? Now, I've mentioned that I haven't had any complaints until I got the letter. I cleaned up the lot because, like I say, I didn't know. Matter of fact, one of the cars, the SUV you see there, I have since sold it, so I just got 4 trailers is all I have there. But the only people, and I'll draw your attention to your package on page 2, is you got Miss Overton, Mr. Fucciarelli, Mr. Gregory, Mr. DiCastella, Miss DiCastella, Miss Fucciarelli, Mr. Thayer, and Mrs. Thayer. This is 5 families out of 240 homes in Talls Bay Colony that has come forward to make a complaint. I should make notice here, all 5 of those people or families have been on the board or are on the board of directors right now since this has been issued. So this isn't just the residents in Talls Bay Colony. This is the board of directors that are complaining, or a group of the board. The other thing is one of the responses that I know Mr. Woody got back from a commissioner stated that we want to make sure if we do this, we're not hurting restricted covenants. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you that's where it should be addressed at. The restricted covenants in a homeowners association is where this should be addressed. The county shouldn't bar us from putting them on there. The homeowners restricted covenants should do it. Our restricted covenants do not prevent us from having trailers on a vacant lot. And if they wanted to try to get the restricted covenants changed, I'm pretty sure that it would not pass the majority vote that's required by the homeowner association to get it done. If people were really upset, they would be here voicing a concern. They're not here. Just the board is trying to jam something down the community. I wasn't the only one that got the letters. We've had people that have moved out of the colony because of the letter they got. I don't want to go down that path. The point is I made a change here that I think makes sense for people, and is something I hope you seriously look at. I have a couple more pictures that I do want to show. Mr. Woody, if you'd show the Overton's property. Well, there's stairs. That one right there is Mr. Thayer. He's one of the people that rode around with the county code enforcement officer. That black car is parked on his vacant lot next to his house. If you show me Miss Overton's lot. That is the violation I had when the county. This is Miss Overton's lot. It's not showing, it's zoomed in. If you zoom out on that, well, what it would show is another truck on the side of the SUV, and it showed the lawnmower on the other side of the shed. It also showed her house. Matter of fact, I brought a picture of it that I will pass around. This is the picture that I brought. What you will see is where the house is located. Then there's a vacant lot. What is against our restricted covenants is that shed that's sitting on the second lot. Now, this is the president of the homeowner association who's supposed to be enforcing the restricted covenants and is not. But regardless, I haven't complained about this, and I haven't complained about the Thayer's car or anybody else's car in a vacant lot because it makes sense to leave them there. Okay, it doesn't hurt. But according to the county's UDO, they're just as illegal having those on the vacant lot, regardless if it's next door to their house or not. The UDO does not allow that unless they're combined lot, and these are not combined lots. At least they were not according to the county's website just before I came here. So that's just as illegal as mine over at the garden because there's a house and another vacant lot before mine. So I would ask that you look at this as to what it really is. It's not an issue. To me, it's not an issue. Obviously, it is to some. If you look at the reason that you made this text amendment to the UDO to begin with, that was understandable. When people from up north or other places were just dumping stuff on vacant lots to avoid taxes or whatever. However, that's not the case here. These are all tax-producing vehicles. They're registered. They're in my ownership. They're on my property, and I live in that residential area, and I provided for setbacks that will prevent this. Nobody can say that my trailers over on that vacant lot is reducing property values and then turn around and say it's okay that I can put on my front yard and put a lot more on there that's not going to reduce property values. Now one of the things that was in your package, the names that I list off, one of the ladies on there mentioned that this is not personal. Well, it's hard to believe it's not personal when you've had the deputy sheriff call on you twice, you've had the health department call on you 3 times, you had CAMA call on me, had Mike Doxey, I don't know what department he's in, but he just showed up today too for the same thing. CAMA was there. And this has all been in the last 2 months, okay, that these agencies have been out there and not one violation was found. So I find it hard to say it's not personal. Maybe I shouldn't have brought that up, but I just felt it needed to be said. And I'm not going to ramble on any longer. I pretty much stated what I had to say, and I just hope that you will let common sense prevail and look at it and see that I'm not proposing anything that's going to make it harder for the county to enforce, okay? And they're not enforcing the UDO as it is right now. If I had them there since '98 and didn't know I was in violation. They came around, and I think it was 21 or 22 letters that they handed out to other people. And I will promise you, half of those letters, you go right back there now, and the trailers and everything are right back on the lots where they were. Okay? They moved it to get the clearance and put them right back until there's another person that complains. And I think that's wrong. You know, I hate to say this, but the Republican Party is all about let's get out of people's homes, let's get out of their business, let's get on with the big things. Well, when you make an ordinance like this that restrict me from using my property, you're right there. And the last I checked, you were all Republicans, so I had to bring that up and mention it. Anyhow, I have nothing else to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Snyder. Next, we have, I think it's...
Mr. Chairman, can I ask?
Certainly,
Mr.
yeah.
Snyder
Any questions for Mr. Snyder? Go ahead, Mr. Beecher.
Tell me, Mr. Snyder, tell me if this is plausible. In my perspective, that if you change things around, not everybody is going to be as diligent as you to keep it straight, to be everything nice and in order. But when you've changed a rule, you can't call this the Denton Snyder rule, and he's the only one that gets to live by it. So if we make changes and go along with what you're saying, then the Pandora's box that will open up, and people will bend the system and work the system. And we're having a struggle in this county to clean stuff up that has been allowed to go on and on and on. And I think this is not personal for me, but it scares me that somebody is not as diligent as you are to keep your property straight. And there's other people, because trust me, in this county, people are taking advantage of the system, and you wouldn't believe some of the holes of stuff here. And once we change this thing, if we do, then that Pandora's box is opened, and we lose control. So does that sound plausible to you?
I hear what you're saying, but I really believe in this case the answer is no. It's not plausible. What they can do and what they are doing, they're doing under the existing UDO right now. If you can't enforce the UDO that you have, then why do we have a UDO? Okay? Changing this to give people use of their property, okay, give something that makes sense if you look at the pictures. If you look at a front yard cluttered up with a whole bunch of trailers and everything else because the UDO allows it, or if you look at 4 of them over at the garden, which is not allowed by the UDO, what logical conclusion do you come to? Which one of those two? I would turn it around and ask you, which one of those two pictures will reduce property values? Which one would be distractive to a residential area? All this garbage in your front yard or something that's set back off the road. 100 foot off the road is what I believe the setback is in the text amendment. 10 feet off the property line. You can see right there. I mean, I have one other picture I'll pass around since you asked the question. And the reason I'm doing this is today I had to go and pick up a deep freezer that I bought. I hooked up my trailer, pulled it up to the front of the garden, had to go to the house to get some rope, and my neighbor's out there taking a picture to document that I don't have my trailers where they're always at. So when I got my deep freeze picked up, got it offloaded into the garage, I put the trailers back and my vehicles back to the way that I said I would keep them. And if you notice that the time there is something like 12:07 or 12:15 or something like that. This isn't personal, but I tell you what, I'm almost to the point right now. I'm afraid to bend over and pick potato because I'm afraid I'm going to break wind and they're going to call the EPA on me. I'm just about over it. So anyhow, I hope I answered your question. Thank you.
Chairman, I got
1 second.
a question, not necessarily for Mr. Snyder.
Okay.
I will say this, sounds like there's a lot of love going on in that neighborhood that you live in. I'm kind of thankful that I'm not experiencing some of that, but is this going to apply on the Outer Banks as well?
Right now, Mr. Snyder has limited to the R zoning district, so no, it would not.
Our zoning district doesn't apply on the Outer Banks?
Most of the property over there is zoned R01 or R02.
So there is no residential?
Not residential zoning, no, sir.
Okay.
That's primarily a residential zoning category for the mainland.
But it would apply to every single subdivision on the mainland of Currituck County?
Many of them, not all of them, but many of them, yes. There's some other zoning districts out there, in fairness, but it would.
Knott's Island, Gibbs Woods.
There's some that are zoned ag, there's some that are zoned RA, but the great majority of our subdivisions are zoned R and are subject to this amendment.
I have a question for Mr. Woody, too. Of the numerous subdivisions approved by the previous board out in the middle of farm fields, are any of those zoned R?
Yes.
So we've actually got farm fields out here where it's technically illegal for you to park anything if there's not a house on it?
Or if you're not a bona fide farm. There is an exemption for bona fide farms. It would supersede any zoning requirements.
Any further questions? Hearing none. Generally, folks, what we do, the applicant has time that he needs to present his case, and the rest of the speakers, I'll ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes, if you would, please. First, we have Linda. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
I am sorry.
I'd like to ask that when they identify themselves with name and address, would they please also let us know if they're an officer of the Homeowners Association?
Mr. McCree, is that acceptable?
You can certainly ask. I don't know that they're required to tell you, but you can certainly ask that up.
Because personal experience, one of the things that I see happening here, and it's a pretty well-known fact, that over 2/3 of the people in the entire United States subject to homeowners associations hate them. And the reason is that oftentimes they get very onerous and very burdensome with some of the rules they try to enforce on their neighbors. It's a problem that the North Carolina legislature is trying to address because there have been actual cases where homeowners associations foreclosed on people for less than $200 in fines and took their homes. And so I can see where this kind of thing might be going on here. So I'm personally sympathetic to Mr. Snyder's case, if that's the situation. And I think in this particular one, this homeowners association is not mandatory, and that some people don't belong to it and therefore don't comply with the rules and regulations of it. So I'm interested in making sure the rights of all the people there are protected. But I also am very sensitive to the fact that oftentimes they tend to be overly zealous. In fact, in two notable, very nice subdivisions in Currituck County right now, those subdivisions are technically failures because the homeowners association rules are so burdensome that people will not buy there. They've depressed the property values, and I just don't like seeing that happen.
Yes, ma'am. Please come forward, give your name and address, and if you choose to honor Mr.
Of course I do.
Okay.
I'm Linda Taylor Day, and I live at 106 Pike Street in Moyock. I live in Tulsa Bay Colony. I am a homeowners associate. I do pay my dues, $100 a year, but I don't sit on the board. And the only reason I'm here is I agree with this gentleman here. By allowing the Labontes who live right next door to me had the same thing. They had a lot of stuff on their property, and when they got their letter, they totally cleaned it off, and it looks really nice. And I just don't want to see these vacant lots being piled with boats, trailers, and trucks and everything. It depreciates your home. There's 9 homes out there that are trying to sell through RE/MAX, and people drive by and they don't want to see it. They do not want to see an empty lot with trailers or cars or boats or whatever on them. The lots are supposed to be building lots, not storage lots. And I'm one of the people that basically did have my home up for sale, and I took it off the market because it's not going to sell. Not when they can look down the street and see Mr. Snyder's beautiful lot with all of his trailers and trucks and everything else on it. No one's going to buy in that community. I'm sure that you gentlemen are tired of hearing it, but none of you live there. One should maybe take a drive by and see what we're looking at. If one person can clean up his lot that's adjoint to his house, why are we making a special exemption from one person? And I'm not part of the clique, and I don't drive around taking pictures and everything. But I just don't think it's fair that people that live out there have to have our whole lives torn apart because somebody wants to have trailers or trucks or coolers or whatever else they want on their lots. And that's all I have to say, and thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, just for the record,
Yes.
I have ridden through there on 2 different occasions since this has come forward.
Okay. Do you want to discuss it?
No, well, the lady said that we should ride through there
Oh,
and look
yes,
at it.
yes.
I
Yes.
have done that, knowing this was coming forward.
Right, okay. Next, we have Cindy Overton. Same thing, if you will give your name and address, and
Okay, there wasn't anybody here right before.
My name's Cindy Overton. I live at 104 Marlin, and yes, I'm on Tulsa Bay Colony's board, but when we have attended the other 2 meetings, these are neighbors that live in the neighborhood. This doesn't have anything to do with the board. If it had to do with the board, I'd hold a meeting and I'd tell everybody, hey, let's go on down to the commissioners' meeting so we can, attack. This is neighbors saying they don't like this in our neighborhood. My lot faces on Marlin Street. The lot behind me is still in my husband's name, and it looks straight across to Mr. Snyder's. It's too bad you aren't able to see the pictures, because the pictures that he was saying that I took when I was watching what time he left and come back to see if he's parking his trailer in the right place, I took the most beautiful picture to show you how his lot looks today, with the weeds up like this, with the garden, the big pile of dirt over there. That's what we're looking at right outside the Fucciarelli's window. It doesn't have anything to do with the people in the board. These is neighborhood people that don't want this. I also had pictures of the LaBounty lot that my front door comes out of. At one time, there were so many things sitting over on his lot, you couldn't see my actual front door. You could see like the peak going up. You really couldn't see my front door. They got that notice. Those notices were sent out somewhere around like January 14th, 15th, something of that sort. Then people come there, they bust their butts, they cleaned it up. There still isn't a thing on it. It looks nice as can be. And that's what it's about. People not having to look at stuff sitting all around on these lots. And maybe he does keep his nice some of the time. Other times he doesn't do that. And you'll have a lot of people that will be like the LaBounties that just really don't care because there's nobody there to enforce it and make people not park their stuff there. The neighborhood has gotten better, and we've had the help from the county. I just hope you do the right thing and not allow everybody to be parking trailers and stuff on lots that they don't own, that there's no house that recognizes them. I don't know what color the truck was for sure that was parked there. Could have been my stepson, my daughter-in-law. They go out on the boat. There's a boat that sits over there at the dock where the empty lot is. My Expedition, I used to haul my mom and dad around. I got 56 Thunderbirds sitting in the garage, and I move it around to the other side there by the shed when I'm not using it, and I drive my 56 Thunderbird. I haul my mom around when I need it, so it does not sit there all the time. It's not parked there like it's on an empty lot. Thank you very much.
Matt, can I ask her a question?
Certainly.
I remember several years ago there was an issue in Tulls Bay with a sunk boat.
It's still there. It's still there.
That boat is still in the water.
I guess they're saying there isn't any gas coming out of it, so it's still sitting there.
Have y'all as a homeowners association taken up addressing these issues?
I had a neighbor that kind of took that on herself and had just made all kinds of phone calls, and every time she comes to a dead end saying that if there's no engine in it and it's still basically kind of, I guess, floating a little bit, that it still can sit there, but it fills with water. It sits down and...
Can't they amend their covenants to address something like that, Mr. McCree?
Well, I think they may have now, if I'm not mistaken, developed a plan under the Planned Community Act, a property owners association, that they can, with a 67% vote, amend restrictive covenants. Yes.
Okay. I was just curious if y'all had ever tried to address. I remember that issue several years ago, and it seemed like we couldn't get nothing done. But I understand homeowner associations can do things that we can't do, and I was wondering if y'all had ever addressed these vacant lots, or is this just
not
something
as far as I
just...
know, and I've only been on the board for approximately a year.
Okay, thank you.
I have one suggestion for you, too, that you might consider. When it comes to approving changes to your covenants, the ratio that Mr. McCree spoke about can also be changed. Normally, that's the requirement, but I know of at least one that changed it to 2/3 of the respondents because they found they never could get anybody to respond to the request for that. And that sure facilitates if you need something. And the thing that prompted it was when Mrs. Snyder mentioned that if this kind of thing needed to be prevented and could be done so in the covenants, then that would be a good way of polling the neighbors, the residents or owners in this particular subdivision, to find out what they really thought, is to go ask them and say, hey, we're thinking about changing the covenants to do this. Now, the county doesn't have anything to do with enforcement of covenants, but as I said, my concern with this actually clause of the UDO essentially is that we let you do it on a house lot, even though it can look like crap, and turn around the vacant lots we try to make pristine. I don't think it should either not be allowed anywhere, or you should treat them all the same is really kind of what we're looking at. We're just trying to arrive at what's going to be the best situation, you know. As far as enforceability, the easiest way to do away with the problem with enforceability is do away with the ordinance altogether. Then you don't have to enforce anything. But it's sort of like, people talk about raising the debt ceiling to cure the financial straits the country's in, but that's sort of like curing DUI by raising the blood alcohol limit. It doesn't always accomplish what you're looking for.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Etheridge.
Paul triggered a memory. I think the issue with the boat was those canals are considered public trust waters now. And can a homeowners association have jurisdiction over something like that?
Well, I'll just go back to the boat. You may remember I was going to take that under advisement and try to figure out a method. I did start looking into that, and of course with other things that have been going on since I became involved with those, I will put it back on my to-do list to get back on top of that to try to address the boat issue in some other fashion.
That wasn't too long ago.
It was probably just a couple months ago, maybe.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, ma'am.
Also, the shed was permitted through the county.
I'm sorry?
The shed that he said was speaking of, it was permitted through the county.
Okay.
Next, we have Heidi Futurelli, I believe.
Almost, but not
Okay, I'm sorry.
Hello, my name's Heidi Futrelli, and I live at 107 Flounder Street. I live right across the storage lot, right across the street from it. I'm not really sure if I really want to go down this road, but I think I'm going to anyway. Quite frankly, I think, Mr. Rohr, you came off as pretty prejudiced against what the people in the neighborhood are doing, and you really don't understand what's going on. And all we're trying to do is get people to clean up their clean it up. We're not strong-arming anybody. We're not bullying people. We're not foreclosing on people's houses. We just want them to clean up their junk. It's an aging community, and the only way we can hold on to what little property value we have left is to get people to clean their stuff up. And for you to represent, prior to us coming up talking, for you to represent associations that way, I think was really unfair. And if you want to know the truth, Mr. Snyder was president of the association, and he stored construction equipment at the playground. So, but having said that, my husband was a Navy SEAL. We made a lot of sacrifices for him to do what he had to do. I was alone on anniversaries, on birthdays, on Christmas, raising two simultaneously screaming babies. But we made that sacrifice for what we thought this country stood for. And we really think that the government protects its people. So now I pose a question to you. If when I look outside, if I move into a residential neighborhood, and you said it was rural, Tulsa Bay isn't rural. It's a neighborhood with little bitty lots with, 200 and something homes on it? It's not rural. But anyway, if I move into a residential neighborhood and there's wagons and junk and cars and right outside my window, I moved in there with the assumption that I would be protected, that there would be some kind of zoning laws to prevent this from happening, but it's not. So I'm asking you, how is that protecting me? How is that protecting my family? How is y'all said it's not personal. When all you have, especially in today's economy, is the value of your house, and if somebody is compromising the value of your house, how is that not personal? How is that not personal? This isn't a rhetorical question. But anyway, thank you. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions?
I'm going to be compelled to address that. Ms. Futurelli, and I apologize if you took offense to what I said, but I didn't say anything specifically about the Tulsa Bay Property Owners Association. I just said that from my research, generally, property owners associations tend to have a lot of difficulties, and the reason is that oftentimes they are owners with rules and regulations imposed upon the residents, oftentimes without the residents' choice, because people don't tend to respond to that. What I'm trying to assess is what this particular situation is. And I agree with you, and I've driven through Tulsa Bay too, and I understand what it is. By the way, Currituck is a rural county. We were reclassified as that again not too long ago to kind of separate us from the air quality issues up in the Hampton Roads area. So I actually commend the efforts of any property owners association to try to maintain the appearance of the neighborhoods. We have, since this board's been here, or since the 2008 election, really tried to get the entire corridor of Currituck County cleaned up and found it to be a very difficult task to do. And what we're trying to do here is find out, okay, is there a way to apply those protections you're looking for equally to everybody? Because right now the county zoning does prohibit exactly what you're talking about. Mr. Snyder's asked that we relax it in some cases, but his reason for it is that he says he can do that on his primary residence lot. So if your house were directly across the street from his lot and he had all this stuff where his house is, had all this stuff parked in the front yard, you aren't being protected by that.
But if you saw his lot, it's this little pie-shaped lot, and it's it wouldn't be as noticeable. It's in the back of the cul-de-sac. I don't really know of any house that would be looking right at it. And it was really less offensive in his front yard. But, you know, I came from Virginia Beach, and everybody in Virginia Beach, when they had stuff, you pay to store it. That's what everybody else does.
Well, here again, of course, we're in a situation where we can't apply a law to one specific lot. Essentially, if we're looking at doing some of the UDO, we're looking at something that's going to affect any lot that's classified the same way.
Right.
Okay,
All I'm asking, you know, you asked us as we came up to state if we were board members or not. But again, you keep in mind that, you know, Denny, he was president of the board, and he did put construction equipment on our playground.
Well, he made a statement that the people that had addressed this, that had actually complained about it, were all just members of the board of the
That's not
homeowners
true.
association, and that's what I was trying to ascertain, to find out if the people here complaining about were in fact those board members or not.
Okay.
Just an ascertaining of fact.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Next, we have David Thayer. Hopefully I got that right.
Yes, sir, you did. I am David Thayer. I live at 113 Flounder Street in Moyock, and I am on the board. And I'm not here tonight to pick on any one person or any two people that live in the colony. I'm here for Currituck County. And as you know, Currituck County is not the most beautiful county in North Carolina. However, I'm sure you saw in the paper Sunday, I think it was Sunday, the airport trying to attract business. I don't think business is going to want to come here if they see all this stuff laying around lots and things. Thousands of people come down 168, 158. I'm sure they're looking at this too. And I don't think they want to move here. A lot of counties, I think it's Hertford or Edenton, one of those, there is a lot of that. And people want to move there. I think we read that in the paper, I think last year sometime. So I just hope you think about this before you make a decision tonight and what's good for Currituck County. Questions?
Any questions for Mr. Thayer?
I'd only like to say thank you, Mr. Thayer.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
And
sir.
thank Mr. Woodington for the way he presented that tonight. And thank you for some of your comments tonight,
Thank you.
positive and negatives.
That's all that we have signed up to speak. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Okay, young lady up front.
My name is Teresa McPherson. I'm president with the Walnut Island Property Owners Association. I'm not quite sure where to begin. Let me say this. This is probably a really good precursor to what is coming up in October. I came before the board last year about an event that we tried to initiate in Walnut Island called Community Pride Days. It was a 3-day event to clean up Walnut Island. As a homeowner association board member, you face a great deal of challenge trying to get property owners to take some pride in their property. Just as you sit here and tell us that you find it very difficult as board members to take a whole community, or excuse me, a whole county to do the same, I can relate to that. I can't even imagine on that scale. But last year, you declared October to be Community Pride Month because of what we had started. And we're extremely grateful. And we're in preparation for our second annual cleanup day in October. And the irony of the whole thing is that when we did this event last October, there was a piece of property in Walnut Island that had several boats that had not been moved in years. They had trees growing up through them. Some were on trailers, some were not. We had 2 mobile campers, the kind you would drive around, sitting on the property. We went to these property owners and told them that we would have it pulled off for them for free. The father who owns the property was very reluctant. His son tried to get him to agree to it. He was very reluctant. And in the end, we were only able to move one boat. Today, all of those vehicles sit in the same place, have not moved. I don't even believe they're registered or insured, and they look horrible. They're dilapidated. So while I sympathize with this gentleman and appreciate that he wants to situate them nicely on his property, it is a slippery slope, and homeowners associations face a great deal of challenge. So please consider that as you make your decision. It is a very frustrating process, and I understand that it is a big decision to have to consider, but do not open up that Pandora's box as you suggest, because you just don't want to go there. You don't. And if you need a little bit more convincing, drive through Walnut Island. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Gentleman all the way in the back. Good evening, sir.
How you doing? My name's Bill Gregory. I live at 116 Porpoise Street. I feel like that people that have more equipment or whatever it be, cars, boats, that the county has, or in Currituck County, we now have storage lots that you can put them in a secure place. You can put them there neatly. And we never had that when I first moved down here. And I've been in Tulls Bay Colony, a resident there for about pretty close to 30 years. Been on and off the board that whole time. And, excuse me, in the last few years, we have built the community up to where we're not where we want to be, but we're a lot better than we were. And as far as association, when you go down and you look at a lot, or you look at a house in Tulls Bay Colony, when you sit down with a lawyer, you sign a piece of paper that you are going to be a member of the association. And due to, which I won't get into, technical difficulties years back, way the contract was wrote up, there were some flaws in there, which now we have worked through a good portion of them. But I feel like this here, even as when I was a board member, I had no right to go to someone's house and tell them that they were in violation. I feel like that my taxes pay the county to enforce things that are not right. Because when you take an individual and you go to someone's house, it can be some hard feelings, there can be some trouble. But I feel like that we need this ordinance in there. Mr. Snyder may keep his lot just as neat as a pin. But Mr. Jones that lives around the corner, there's no telling what he's going to have on it. And we did have, as you said before, people from Maryland, people from Virginia, bought lots in the colony, and they stored whatever they wanted to on there. No houses, didn't even live in the county, had that piece of property. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to speak? Hearing none, I will close the public hearing. Is there any discussion by the board?
I'd like to say I live in a community with a very, very, very strict homeowners association, and I've had disagreements with that very, very strict homeowners association. However, that very, very strict homeowners association keeps our community straight. It's clean. You don't see stuff, you know, and I appreciate that. Yeah, I appreciate that there's somebody out there that says you're not going to have grass, or you're not going to have boats, you're not going to have all this other stuff. And I, for one, as a homeowner, I appreciate it. I, for one, also work with Mrs. McPherson at Walnut Island, and Pandora's box is open. And we're finding out, Mr. Woody and his staff, how hard it is to enforce and clean up and threaten, go to court, do whatever. And I, for one, and I think Mr. Woody, you had said planning had denied Mr. Snyder, and your staff did also?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to go along with what planning and staff has done and deny Mr. Snyder his request.
I would second that.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Discussion?
We were having discussion, and
We usually have
Came out of
discussion after a second. I just wanted to ask Mr. Woody a question. First of all, there's been a lot of people talking really bad about a homeowner association, and I'm sure there's some onerous rules or whatever, but last time I checked, you voluntarily move into the community with the homeowners association. I don't think there's a law that requires you to live somewhere in a homeowners association. So if people aren't happy with the homeowners association, they need to read it before they move in. And then if they're not happy after that, they can move out. It's a free country still. The question I have is, Mr. Snyder has brought up that there's a lot of other violations going on. Have they, in fact, cleaned up? Are they ongoing? Are we, is the staff enforcing and making people clean up? I mean, I know you can't give me a case by case, but was there 25 violations? Was there 5? Just for a little background.
In Tulls Bay Colony, we went out there and did what we call a sweep. So we went through the neighborhood, didn't look at any individual properties, just went through the neighborhood and tried to identify violations. We found more than 20 properties that were in violation. I don't know the exact number. 24. As with any enforcement effort, most folks will clean up because when they get the letter from the county, they just don't want to deal with the county. There's a handful of folks that you got to send them some citations to kind of let them know you mean business, and they'll clean up. There's always 2 or 3 that just won't clean up, and that's when you have to go through all the citations, and it goes over to the county attorney's office. In this case, I felt like we had pretty good success in Tulls Bay Colony. Now, it may be time. It's been about 6 months. It may be time to go back through the neighborhood again and do a follow-up sweep. And that's something that I think is probably important for the county to do, is to be a little more proactive in our code enforcement.
Well, I just don't want anybody to be singled out and others not be made to comply. I want to treat everybody
We try hard to be fair. We really try hard to do that.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, however, we are a complaint-driven
exactly
enforcement group. We don't do these sweeps unless the community or an individual files complaints, right?
That is correct. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I have one further comment. Based on what I originally started with, my complaint to this entire UDO section was the fact that you allow, or the county allows, conditions on a residential lot, an improved residential lot, that it doesn't allow on unimproved lots. And that as drastically affects the property values in a neighborhood as the unimproved lots would. And I would kind of like to take a look at what is allowed and maybe what restrictions should be imposed on normal R lots as to the number and types of vehicles that can be parked there compared to what we're doing with unimproved lots. Because people will abuse the privilege of that as well. And the homeowners associations, as I said, that I know, that I've dealt with personally, and you and I have talked about some of them before, Mr. Woody, there have been some very successful subdivisions here because the covenants that were put in place when those subdivisions were set up were relaxed somewhat by the homeowners once they took control of it in order to make it more amenable with the area. Some don't allow you to park a boat in your yard. Well, this is a waterfront type community, so people should be allowed to do that if the homeowners agree to it. But the issue boils down to no one should be allowed to use their property to the extent that abuses their neighbors. And that's what we need to address. It's not the issue of the unimproved lots, but also the issues of the lots with the houses on them. And I'd like to see us address that in some fashion for any residential neighborhood.
Thank you, Mr. Brewer.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a comment also. I can appreciate, Mr. Snyder, and where you're coming from. I just want to encourage, just as Paul said, Commissioner O'Neill, to encourage the community to get out and make those complaints. I live in an older neighborhood, and I can certainly appreciate all of you in Tulsa Bay. I live in Ranchland, so I purchased a new home in that area, so I can identify with the struggles and pains that you all are going through also. So again, I just appreciate Mr. Snyder and your efforts in standing up.
Okay.
That's it.
One more.
Did we have a no vote?
No.
Okay.
No, but
All right.
Ms. McPherson, I think you have a upcoming Pride Day, or did you just have one?
Well, we have a quarterly cleanup for our community. This quarterly cleanup was so successful, we had over 1,000 pounds of trash picked up on Saturday and taken to the dumps. And that is just a quarterly curbside cleanup that we offer to our community. The annual one in October is where we will go onto the property by their request and pull up anything that they want removed. But I will say, these boats, when you talk about having a community that boats should be allowed to be on, there's a fine line between having an operable boat and having boats that have trees growing up.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman, I want to make one comment.
Please, Mr. Etheridge.
Having got the most longevity on this board, I got to commend Tulsa Bay Colony for what they have done, because I know they've worked very hard to clean it up, and from where they were 6 years ago to where they are today is worlds apart.
Okay, moving along.
Mr. Chairman,
We have a
may I
motion and a
please
second.
have a poll of the commissioners? I didn't hear what the total vote was.
It was a unanimous
There were no nays.
It was a unanimous vote.
Okay, I just want to know what it was. Thank you.
Moving along, item number 5, consideration and action, adoption of the Currituck County Comprehensive Transportation Plan in accordance with North Carolina General Statute 136-66.2. Mr. Woody, are you handling this?
I'm going to start us off. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
A CTP is a comprehensive transportation plan. I've done a work session with this board before, previously to this, so you're aware of that. We've done 2 public drop-in sessions. And we've had a committee that was comprised of citizens and advisory board members, so we've tried to make folks aware of this process moving forward. Real quickly, a CTP, or a comprehensive transportation plan, is a long-range multimodal transportation plan. It's developed cooperatively with NCDOT, the Albemarle RPO, and the local government. And what the objective of the comprehensive transportation plan is to prioritize future transportation projects. We're looking out 20 years, 35 years into the future, and we're trying to prioritize those transportation improvements with our local land use policies and with our community objectives. So the goal is to make transportation projects more consistent and more compatible with what the local community's desires are. Very important plan. The last adopted plan for Currituck County, used to be called a thoroughfare plan, was in 1988, so it's been a long time. We completed the thoroughfare plan in 1999, but that was not adopted. So we're here today to present to you briefly will be the 2011 Comprehensive Transportation Plan, which will help establish some of the transportation priorities for this county. Tonight, and that plan was developed partially by a committee comprised of staff, advisory board members, and citizens. But tonight you're going to hear from Carrie Morrow, who's our representative from NCDOT. She's out of the Raleigh office. Stephen Lambert sitting back there in the back. He's our RPO coordinator, and he worked hard on this plan as well. After Carrie's presentation, Mr. Chairman, what I'll ask is that we open a public hearing and give an opportunity for any citizens to comment should they desire. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Woody. Do we need to open the public hearing before she speaks?
I think it's okay to do it afterwards.
Okay. Welcome.
As Ben said, I'm presenting the comprehensive transportation plan that we've been working on for the past nearly 2 years now. I know that Ben went over the plan with you and the recommendations last month, so I won't go into too much detail. I'm passing around a set of maps, which the first sheet is an adoption sheet. The second and third sheets show the highway recommendations. The fourth sheet shows the public transportation recommendations. The fifth sheet shows the bicycle recommendations, and the last sheet shows pedestrian recommendations. I'll basically go through and just highlight some of the major things. For highway, the recommendations are mostly for, the big ones are for US 158 and NC 168 improvements. There's an NC 168 bypass around Moyoc. that's designated as freeway. I did want to note about that particular recommendation that we will add some documentation in the report that accompanies these maps, that alternative alignments that connect the bypass north of the Virginia border will be considered in the future, should this project receive funding down the road. Also, for the connector between 168 and 17, alignments for that will be considered that would include segments to be on new location, because that currently is designated as the South Mills Road alignment. There's a big focus on multi-use paths, which I know has been a priority for the county, as well as a trolley for public transportation along the Outer Banks portion of the county. Yes, I can answer questions, or you can open up for the public.
Any questions?
I have one regarding the multi-use paths. Are they going to be required by DOT in any areas other than the Outer Banks area? I know some other counties have been concerned about projects being held up because they didn't want a bicycle path out in the middle of the country.
No, the plan does recommend multi-use path for a small portion of 158, but no, it would not hold up progress of any highway projects.
Any other questions?
In choosing or showing a projected corridor for the bypass, how did you arrive at doing that?
In the 1999 thoroughfare plan that Ben mentioned, that was actually a very similar alignment was selected there. So we used that as a basis for it, and we did make some minor changes just to connect back to 158 a little closer to the airport and the new development area there.
Because I think in that plan there was 5 alternatives that showed possibly.
Right, and this plan kind of it addresses the problems that are identified, the transportation needs that are identified. We didn't really pinpoint an exact location. We did base it generally on that alternative that was the alignment that was in the 1999 plan. However, down the road, should that project be funded, all possible alternatives will be considered in the future.
Thank you.
Hearing no further questions, I will now open thank you, ma'am. I'll open the public comment or public hearing process. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak to this issue? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. I will ask the board for their pleasure.
I move to approve it.
Do I have a second?
That.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, ma'am, for your time.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is item number 6, Corolla Fire Department request to purchase property. Mr. Scanlon?
Mr. Chairman, you have in your agenda package a letter from Currituck Fire and Rescue requesting to be able to move forward with purchasing some property. We've got Representative Mr. Richmond. He's here to represent the fire department, and we'll present the proposal to them. Ben, you should have a map that shows the area. That might be helpful as a reference.
Good evening, Mr. Richmond.
Good evening. My name is Barry Richmond. I live in Corolla. I'm the president of Corolla Fire and Rescue. Along with me are Division Chief for Corolla Ocean Rescue, Sylvia Wolf, and our treasurer, Will Tiller. As you well know, tourism is the lifeblood of Currituck County, and the bulk of the tourism takes place on the Outer Banks. As so well put by Mr. Scanlon last time we negotiated a contract for Corolla Ocean Rescue, one of the issues that is so sensitive to tourists that come to the Outer Banks is the location of lifeguard stands. The reputation of Corolla Ocean Rescue is excellent and is essentially responsible for a substantial amount of the tourism that takes place in the Currituck Outer Banks. The programs that Corolla Ocean Rescue runs, such as the SEALS program and the Junior Lifeguard program, as well as their rapport that they have established with the tourism, the tourists themselves, as well as the youngsters that have come to the Outer Banks, is excellent. We hire we have 44 full-time lifeguards and 2 part-time lifeguards. In order to be competitive with the other lifeguard associations along the Outer Banks and elsewhere in North Carolina and elsewhere in the country, our contract requires us to pay these lifeguards a competitive rate and not an excessive rate. As you well know, Corolla, the Currituck Outer Banks itself, has very scarce number of accommodations for employees, ones that they can afford. In view of that, a number of years ago, Corolla Fire and Rescue bought a house next door to the Whalehead Station, and we accommodate a couple of dozen of our lifeguards in that house. We have grown to the point a couple of years ago where we could not accommodate them all, and we now currently, for the last few years, rent a house in Ocean Sands for half of the year at a cost of about $9,000 a year. We need to get rid of that rental situation and get into an ownership situation again. We have found a house in Monterey Shores, which is essentially within walking distance of the Whalehead Station, and we would like to purchase it. One of the reasons that Corolla Ocean Rescue is so successful with the tourists is that since we have provided living accommodations, the relative closeness that these people our lifeguards are to possible rescue situations at any given time is constant. So somebody gets lost on a beach in the middle of the night and they call Ocean Rescue. There aren't people coming up there aren't people that have to come up from Kill Devil Hills because that's where they can find decent rentals. They're coming from the proximity of the fire station. We'd like to purchase a house. We can for approximately $365,000. I'm sorry, $335,000. We have made arrangements with BB&T to do a commercial loan, which would be paid out over 10 years with 20% down, which would cost us around $34,000 a year, which is well within the monies that we generate from donations and the monies that we generate from the sale of T-shirts and like items. So we would like to have the authority, as per our contract, to go into debt for about $270,000 to accommodate the purchase of this house.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Richmond. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Richmond?
Yes, I have one. Mr. Richmond, thank you for what you do, and you do an excellent job over there. I was just wondering if you have considered, with the building of the Mid-County Bridge, and yes, They're going to build it. They're down there core drilling right now on the access areas. But I would, it's supposed to be completed between 2014, 2015. Would that not lessen the need for further housing and a debt, on the rescue and on the fire department?
Well, the answer to that is if it were free, you're probably right. But do you think a lifeguard's going to fork out $45, $50 a day to go round trip on a bridge?
Well, I'm sure it's not going to be that amount. It might be 30. But I just asked the question if you all had considered that, knowing that venue is going to be there.
Well, we have considered that, but as I said before, one of the things that makes Corolla Ocean Rescue work is the speed with which they can get to rescue situations that are not within the normal hours of operation. And to bring somebody over from Idlet or from Coinjock to a rescue up in Corova is not a good situation.
Point taken. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman. Yes, sir.
How many people do you see this one housing?
Our current rental one houses about 10. This has a capacity for 12, and we house all of our officers in the rental house.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'd like to ask a
Mr.
question.
Neal.
This probably has nothing to do with this, but in the event of the dissolution of the Corolla Fire and Rescue Department, what is the plan to dispose of property? Would that revert to the county, or where would the property go?
All of the, according to the contract, all of the assets of a defunct fire department would turn over to the county.
If I'm not mistaken, I think the current contract requires joint title, and it would be up to the Board of Commissioners to decide if you would like to be the joint tenant of a house that has lifeguards there.
I'm not saying I want to. I'm just asking a question when,
looking down the road.
I realize this isn't taxpayer money, but I realize other equipment is paid for with taxpayers' money. Does that revert to the county? Because I've had one person tell me, no, it's not going to the county. Not from your department, but from another department.
Some departments are easier to work with than others, and I think this department would be happy to enter into kind of some reversion agreement or a dissolution in case it was ever dissolved for whatever reason, that it reverts back to Currituck County.
I have no doubts. And my next question is what is your recommendation?
Well, first I need a point of clarification. The letter referred to Corolla Drive and Dolphin Street, which I had as Lot 1, but that is not what you're mentioning. You're talking about something
that
in Monterey
issue
now.
Yeah, that issue
Okay.
has fallen apart because the owners of that property saw we were interested and actually raised the price.
Wow.
Doesn't sound like good business, but that's what they did. So
I certainly have no problem recommending approval for this.
I'll move for approval unless there's another
I'll second it.
question.
I have a motion for approval. Second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I think you're making a good decision, by the way, in purchasing it now, too. Despite Mr. Martin's concern, you obviously would be able to sell it for a nice profit later on if a case came up to do that once that bridge is built.
Thank you.
Item 7, approval of bid for Sheriff's Department vault.
Mr. Chairman, this is a project that actually was approved by the Board of Commissioners several years ago. We moved forward with the actual project, and the contractor went into bankruptcy and defaulted on the project. It did require us to go back and revisit and redesign and bring it back forward to you. We had the first bid opening. We did not receive 3 bidders, so it was re-advertised and rebid. Tonight in front of you, in your agenda package, you have the bid results. The lowest bidder is A.R. Chesson for a contract price of $347,393. That is well under the budget of $400,000 that's been put forward for this project. And staff is making a recommendation that we move forward with A.R. Chesson. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Move for approval.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Item number 8, designation of voting delegate to North Carolina Association of County Commissioners Annual Conference, August 18th, 2011. Chair would like to make a motion to put Mr. Owen Etheridge's name in.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Etheridge?
Thank you. Do my best to represent the county.
Item number 9, consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Motion and a second received. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Commissioners report. Mrs. Gilbert.
Mr. Chairman, I have no comments this evening.
Mr. Petrie.
Not sure if everybody knows this. Our former county manager, Bill Richardson's wife, fell off of a ladder, and she's got a broken wrist, a broken pelvis, and I think a broken back, maybe.
Oh, my goodness.
Her name's Jeannie. Is that what it is?
Sherry Jean.
Sherry Jean.
But just want to let everybody know thoughts and prayers for the Richardson family. And along with Teresa McPherson here for Walnut Island, I can say that Mr. Woody's staff and Teresa's people working together are starting to make a huge difference out there. People are starting to take pride. And I commend Mr. Woody and Commissioners or Manager Scanlon and the staff for moving to clean that up, and Teresa and her people doing that.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Rohr.
I was going to throw something fun out. I was asked today to mention the Currituck Wild Goose Rotary Club is having a golfing event next week, the 25th through the 26th, 27th, 28th it is. Actually, there are two events. One's a golf ball drop. For those of you who aren't familiar with that, it's we get one of the Kohler's helicopters and drop 500 golf balls out of it over the golf course at the point, and the golf balls closest to the hole, 5 of them are entitled to prizes and perhaps as much as $20,000. The Rotary Club members are selling tickets for that. They're $10 each. It's also a golf shootout, and the shootout's like a hole-in-one contest. For $10, you get a sleeve of balls and a shot to try to get closest to the pin, which is 150 yards out. Closest balls each day are finalists. Our closest 10, actually, over the contest, or 10 will be finalists, and they'll have a match on Thursday. And the closest one, if they get in, could win $50,000. So I think there's pretty nice events, and the funds raised by these all go to charity supported by the Rotary Club. So help out if you can.
Thank you, Mr. Rohr. Mr. O'Neill.
Just a clarification. I've had several businesses and people from the Outer Banks ask me how we arrived at the date of August 2nd for fireworks versus a Sunday or some day where people are off work and they could go over there and recreate a whole new 4th of July event. I don't have the particulars, but I know that the county manager can let folks know why it's on is that a Tuesday?
It is a Tuesday.
Instead of like a Sunday where everybody could go.
It's my birthday. They were celebrating. Just kidding. It didn't really.
It was John Moore's birthday.
I thought it was the debt ceiling crisis date.
Well, that happens to be August 2nd, too. That was not the intention. That has been pointed to us after the fact, that that is the drop-dead date on the federal debt limit. Supposedly. Staff was working with the Whalehead Trust and events that they had on that property, looking for a date that we could join them and try to do an event in collaboration of items that they had going on. And as it's been explained to me, that August 2nd was the first date to be available, that they had nothing going on that would be in conflict with what we were trying to do. We were trying to hook it up with, they have a Thursday night concert series. We were trying to do it with that, but I think they have events after the concert series. Tuesday nights they were having wine sales, and August 2nd, I believe, was the date we were told is the first date that they had open for, which we could go ahead and plan.
I thought our goal as a county was to bring people in, not to find something where there's no conflict.
Well, they had other events already scheduled on the grounds and property.
Wow, you'd have even more people at those events.
That certainly was our thought.
Okay, beam me up, Scotty.
At least they didn't close the place for the fireworks like they did the boat basin.
Mr. Etheridge.
Last week, myself, along with Commissioner O'Neill, Commissioner Petrie, and Commissioner Rohr, we attended the grand opening of a new business in Currituck. And it's always good to see the entrepreneurial spirit go, and they had a very good turnout of people there, home health care business, and we want to see more of those type of events in the near future and as we go forward. But I'm proud of what Peter Bishop did to help put that together and get it there. So Peter's to be commended. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Martin.
I'd just like to reiterate, being a member of Rotary, that I'm also selling tickets, and urge all the golfers in the county to please come out and try to win $50,000 or buy a ticket and go for $20,000, and that's open to the general public.
Thank you, sir. I just have one brief comment. Ben, this probably needs to be addressed to you as well. I mentioned to Dan this afternoon, I got an interesting phone call from a homeowner in Pine Island this afternoon. Evidently, his property backs up to the Audubon track, and he is getting tremendous complaints from his visitors there. 7 o'clock in the morning, great big heavy equipment machinery is running, so people can't sleep. He said the foundation, the ground shook the other day to the point to where books fell off the bookcase. I told him, he said it was very noisy. I explained to him that the county did have a noise ordinance and tried to put him in touch with who could take care of that. Is there anything from your perspective that we could do to help alleviate that problem? I also told him that he might need to get in touch with Turnpike Authorities, who was the developer of Pine Island, and who also is a partner in the development, I believe, that's going on now.
There are no zoning requirements that limit the range or scope of construction activities. Perhaps the noise ordinance could come into play, and I can certainly will be happy to communicate those concerns to the developer of the property as an FYI.
Thank you, sir. That's all I have. Mr. Scanlon, manager's report.
Like to announce that as of 2:35 this afternoon, we have closed on and now are the owners of the Carolina water assets on our Outer Banks. We attempted to close Thursday, attempted to close Friday. Different issues did come up. Monday morning came up. But eventually we were able to work through those remaining issues, and we have closed on those processes.
No hallelujah course?
Absolutely.
That should have been the fireworks.
Mr. McCray, Mr. Scanlon, and all the staff who worked so diligently and so hard on that, thank you. I think the people over on the Outer Banks will appreciate that very much.
After how many years, Mr. Scanlon?
Too many to count. Too many to count.
Just had to get the right people in place, that's all.
You were a young man when we started that.
With that being said, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.